2, we will graph something a little bit more difficult with the y equal to a times the cotangent of b times x minus d plus c. We recall that our key points for the cotangent are vertical asymptote, 1, 0, -1, and vertical asymptote. The standard period is pi units. Okay, so let's try something like y equal to 2 times the cotangent of, let's leave 1 for b, and then let's make this x minus, I don't know, pi over 2, and let's shift this thing up 1 or something. Alright, so we recall that our a value is 2, our b value is 1, our c value is 1, and our d value is pi over 2 from our form. There is no amplitude since there's no wave, but our period will be pi divided by b, which is pi over 1 this time. The graphing increment will be pi over 4. Our c value tells us our vertical translation is up 1 unit, and our d value tells us that our phase shift is pi over 2 units to the right. Okay, so we set up our table of our x values. 0 gi is 0, 1 gi pi over 4, 2 gi is pi over 2, 3 gi is 3 pi over 4, and 4 times the graphing increment is pi units, which, if we do this correctly, should always be the end of our period. Now we're going to shift our graph to the right pi over 2 units, so we'll go x plus pi over 2, and here we go 0 plus pi over 2, that is pi over 2, and then pi over 2 plus pi over 4. Well, look at that, it's right here. We just did all this work, so pi over 2 plus pi over 4 is 3 pi over 4, and then we'll be at pi, and then our next place, so this is 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4, this is 5 pi over 4, and then 6 pi over 4, which is 3 pi over 2. These are the x values that will go on our graph. Our y values will be vertical asymptote, 1, 0, -1, and vertical asymptote for the cotangent function. And then we need to multiply these guys by 2, so we'll go 2y. Well, vertical asymptote is just a vertical asymptote. 1 times 2 is 2, 0, -2, and then another vertical asymptote. Now we'll take our vertical shift into account. 2y plus 1, well, you don't need to move a vertical line up. 2 plus 1 is 3, 0 plus 1 is 1, -2 plus 1 is -1, and then a vertical asymptote, and these will be the y values that will go on our graph. So let's draw a period of this function. Here's our x-axis and our y-axis. We need 1, 2, 3. That's as high as we really have to go on our graph. We have to go down as far as -1. And then we'll use our 3 to make our, we'll call this pi right here. And that same distance should be 2 pi. Now notice that our graph has quarters on it of pi, so we need to break each of these pi's into fourths. So here's a half of each pi, and then we'll break each section into halves again to get quarters. So now we've got quarters on our graph. This is pi over 4. 2 pi over 4 reduces to pi over 2. 3 pi over 4. 4 pi over 4. 5 pi over 4. 6 pi over 4 is 3 pi divided by 2. 7 pi over 4. 8 pi over 4. And now we're just going to take the values from our table and put these on our graph. Notice that our x-axis translates up 1 unit, so if you're a person that draws in the translated x-axis, that would go here. That's our translated x-axis. And now when x is pi over 2, we will have a vertical asymptote. So let's draw in this vertical asymptote. When x is 3 pi over 2, we will have another vertical asymptote. When our x value is 3 pi over 4, our y value is 3. Our y value is 1 when x is pi. And we're at negative 1 when x is 5 pi over 4. And then we just connect this dots with a smooth curve in between our vertical asymptotes, and we have 1 period of this function that we were looking after. Let's draw a second period. We're going to have to draw it to the left because there's not really any space to the right on my paper. So we noticed that from vertical asymptote we went 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, and then 4 pi over 4. So let's count from our vertical asymptote that's already established the end of a period. 1 pi over 4, this will be 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4. So we know that we should have a vertical asymptote at the end of this period, which should be here. We'll find out where this is located in just a moment. So we went to the left of 0 pi over 4, so this will be negative pi divided by 4 here. And then the x value at the left edge of this second period that we're drawing will be negative pi over 2. It's pi over 4 units to the left of pi over 4. And then we just repeat this pattern that we established for the cotangent. So just inside of our left edge of the vertical asymptote, our y value should be 3. So when x is negative pi over 4, our y value is 3. When x will be 0, which is the middle of the period, we should have a y value of 1. And when x is the right edge, we'll be at negative 1. And we've established 2 periods.